At the city's edge, where the frozen lake groaned and shifted like a living thing, the hall watch stood sentinel. Their duty was simple in theory, impossible in practice: to keep the ice from crushing Blackwood's heart. The city clung to the lake's surface, like a barnacle to a ship's hull, its timber supports groaning under the relentless pressure of shifting floes. If the ice won, Blackwood would splinter like kindling. Silas adjusted the straps of his leather harness, the weight of his long pike digging into his shoulder. The weapon was nothing more than a sharpened oak pole, wrapped in copper coils, its hollow core filled with boiling water. Steam hissed from the tip, a thin ghostly plume, in the frigid air. It was called a steam pike, and it was the only thing standing between Blackwood and oblivion. "Mind the seal on your boots, Silas," grunted Bram, his breath curling in the cold. Bram was a veteran of the watch, his face a map of scars and frostbite. He spat into the snow, the globule freezing mid-air. "If the rubber cracks, the frost will take your toes before you can yell for a medic. And then we'll have to scrape you off the planks like a bad stain." Silas nodded, though his eyes never left the shifting ice. Blackwood's foundations were a marvel, or a folly, depending on who you asked. The city was built on a lattice of treated timber and thick, black rubber, materials chosen because they flexed under pressure rather than snapping like metal. The rubber, harvested from the great leviathan carcasses that washed ashore in the southern reaches, was as tough as iron, but yielded like a willow in a storm. The timber, salvaged from the wrecks of old ships and reinforced with resins tapped from the rare, gnarled trees that grew in the high valleys, was light enough to float, but strong enough to hold. Bram's peak hissed as he drove it into the ice, melting a jagged seam just wide enough to let the pressure vent. The ice groaned in response, a sound like a dying beast. "There," Bram muttered. "That's the third crack today. The watch is not getting any younger, Silas. You'll be taking over soon enough." Silas swallowed. The lake was restless tonight. The northern lights flickered overhead, painting the sky in greens and purples, but the colors only made the ice seem more alive. It pulsed. It breathed. It waited. A shout echoed from the watchtower. "Ice coming in from the east." "Fast," Bram cursed. "Move, lad, before it pancakes the outer docks." Silas lunged forward, his pike already steaming. The ice was a wall of blue-white fury, creaking as it surged toward the city. He could hear the timber groaning in protest, the rubber squeaking under the strain. The hull watch moved as one, their pikes hissing, their boots crunching on the frozen planks of the outer ring. Blackwood had stood for generations. It would stand a few more. The great boiler's heartbeat pulsed through the city like the slow, relentless tide of a glacier. From my post, at the central vents. I watched the soot walkers move with the precision of clockwork, their leather aprons stained with the same black as the fuel they fed into the flames. Their brass goggles glinted in the firelight, reflecting a world unseen by most. One of pressure gauges and steam whistles, of valves that hissed like serpents, and pipes that groaned under the weight of the city's hunger. He tightened the straps of my basket, the weight of the coal digging into my shoulders. The coal tax wasn't just a levy, it was a covenant. The city's survival depended on it, and so did mine. Every basket hauled, every load stoked, kept the steam flowing, the warmth constant, the illusion of safety alive. Outside, the world was a frozen wasteland, but here, in Blackwood, we thrived in our own artificial sun. The streets were slick with condensation, the air thick with the scent of burning coal and rusted metal. Steam curled from the vents at my feet, painting patterns on the cobblestones that would vanish with the next gust of wind. The city's architecture mirrored its industry, turrets of iron and glass, domes of riveted steel, and bridges of wrought iron that spanned the chasm between the buildings. The great boiler was the crown jewel, its dome a monstrous, ornate thing, its surface etched with soot and time. At the city's heart, the boiler's fire roared, a beast tamed by generations of soot walkers. Their faces were lined with the grime of their labor, but their eyes held a fire that wasn't born of the flames. They were the keepers of Blackwood's soul. Without them, the city would freeze. Without the coal tax, the city would starve. I thought of my father, a sod walker before me, his hands rough as bark from years of stoking the boiler. He used to say, "The fire is the city's heart, but the soot walkers are its pulse." I had never understood what he meant until now, standing here, surrounded by the symphony of hissing steam and the rhythmic clank of machinery. The city's pulse was steady, unyielding. It was a heartbeat that had never faltered, not in 3 generations. And as long as the soot walkers fed the flames, as long as the citizens hauled their baskets of coal, Blackwood would endure. I adjusted my goggles and took a deep breath, the humid air filling my lungs. The world outside was a frozen grave, but here, in the heart of the city, we were alive. We were warm. We were Blackwood. The wind howled across the basin, biting at the exposed skin of the sled's crew. The machine groaned, its brass and steel body shuddering as it carved a path through the frozen crust of the tundra. The great icebreaker, the Blackwood Forge's fury, was no mere sled. It was a beast of burden, a steel titan that defied the glaciers with every labored breath. At its heart, the engine pulsed, its pistons clanking in rhythmic protest as steam hissed from the exhaust stacks. The crew, bundled in thick furs and grease-stained leather, Moved with practiced efficiency, they fed the furnace with compressed coal pellets, their faces lit by the flickering glow of the boiler's heart. The air tasted of burnt coke and iron, thick with the scent of a machine that refused to be still. Joren, the sled's engineer, wiped the soot from his goggles and peered ahead. The glacier loomed, a jagged wall of ice that had swallowed lesser machines whole. But the Fury was no lesser machine. Its reinforced prow, lined with manganese steel teeth, bit into the ice with a sound like 1,000 teeth grinding. Water hissed as it cascaded over the sides, freezing instantly in the sub-zero air. "Watch the starboard stabilizers," Joren shouted over the engine's roar. One of the crew, a wiry man named Tarkin, adjusted the valves, redirecting steam to the sled's outriggers. The machine leaned slightly, its weight shifting as it fought the incline. The glacier was slipping, no, melting before them. The heat from the sled's belly was doing its work, turning the ice beneath into a treacherous slurry. "Tarkin, feed the auxiliary burners," Joren ordered. The crew scrambled, their hands numb as they cranked the feeders. The sled's speed increased, the vibrations rattling their bones. The horizon blurred, only the towering peaks of the basin's distant mountains remained in sight, their peaks wreathed in storm clouds. In the distance, a crack split the ice. The glacier was breaking apart, not just beneath them, but all around. The crew exchanged glances. This was no ordinary thaw. The land itself seemed to be sighing, releasing the centuries of cold it had held in its grip. "It's happening again," muttered Lyra, the sled's navigator, her voice barely audible over the engine. The basin's waking up, the stories they told in Blackwood's taverns, the tales of the steam burp of the South Gate's rubber seals, holding against the glacier's might. These were not just legends, they were warnings. The basin was not a place to be taken lightly. It was a land that tolerated machines, that allowed them to thrive, but only so long as they respected its power. The sled shuddered as it crested a ridge, the ice beneath it groaning in protest. The crew held their breath. For a moment, it seemed the machine might falter, might sink into the abyss of melted snow and ice. But the Fury roared on. Behind them, the glacier groaned, its ancient ice shifting, cracking, giving way. Ahead, the horizon stretched, a pale line where the tundra met the sky. Somewhere beyond that line lay the trade routes, the lifeblood of Blackwood Forge. Somewhere beyond that line, the world waited, and the icebreaker would reach it.